It never starts with thunder. It starts with a hush, the kind that slips under the door at 2 a.m. On the surface, she's fine. She didn't miss you when you begged, when you stayed up fixing, when you began to pull away. Pride kept her warm. But beneath the glass, micro cracks form. The mask holds. The mirror doesn't. What once felt like control begins to tremble, quietly, like ice in the dark. If this hits home, like and subscribe to Stoic Station. Start this journey now. Drop a 1 if you've reacted from emotion before. Drop a 2 if you're learning to stay silent and centered. I read every comment. You want to know when she starts missing you for real? Let's talk about it. And first, the turn no one sees coming. Let's dive in. On when ego becomes a prison. It never begins with fireworks. There's no dramatic collapse, no visible breakdown. The fall of her ego begins in silence, in those quiet, unnoticed moments she never imagined would carry weight. And this is where many men misunderstand. They think she will miss them the instant they walk away. But the truth is, she doesn't, not at first. Her ego shields her. It whispers that leaving you was an act of strength, that cutting you off was proof she was in control. She repeats the same mantras again and again. He'll be back. He's the one who lost me. And for a time, these illusions comfort her. Weeks pass, maybe months, and she thrives on that illusion. To her, the distance feels like empowerment. She believes you'll eventually show weakness, knock at her door, or write the long, desperate message she's already rehearsed in her mind. Her ego counts on your reaction, because your reaction has always been the fuel that kept her sense of power alive. But when you don't give her that, when your silence continues without cracks, the armor of her ego begins to weigh her down. What once felt like freedom slowly turns into confinement. The power she thought she held begins to feel less like a weapon and more like a prison that isolates her. This is where the pain cuts deeper than she expected. She posts something crafted to catch your eye, but you don't respond. Her phone lights up, but it isn't your name. She replays old memories, bracing for the anger or the pursuit she thought was inevitable. But nothing comes, and suddenly the silence becomes deafening, louder than any argument, sharper than any rejection. That's the moment when her pride stops protecting her. What once looked like armor now feels like a barrier that kept her from something genuine. She begins to see that she chose image over intimacy, control over connection, and the weight of that choice becomes her first real wound. And here is where most men falter. They break the silence, they cave, they reach out, they try to ease the tension. But don't make that mistake. If you cave, you hand her ego the very victory it craves. Your true strength lies in restraint, in refusing to fight her pride with your own. Ego doesn't collapse when you attack it. It collapses when you starve it. And the longer you hold your silence, the more her prison closes in on her, until she realizes that what she thought was control was really the beginning of loss. 2. When attention feels empty. At first, she feels untouchable. The moment she steps away, the world seems to reward her with a flood of validation. Compliments arrive in her inbox, likes fill her posts, strangers turn their heads when she enters the room. It's intoxicating, and for a while, she feeds on it like it's proof that she made the right decision. To her, this spotlight feels like power. It convinces her that she doesn't need you, that she can be desired by anyone, anytime. But this is where many men lose their grip on reality. They see the glow, the smiles, the curated photos, and they believe she has already forgotten them. They panic, thinking she is thriving while they are left behind. What they don't see is that attention, no matter how loud, is shallow. It fills the surface, but never touches the soul. At first, she doesn't notice the difference. She eats up the attention, mistaking it for fulfillment. But soon, the shine begins to wear off. Compliments that once felt exciting start to feel predictable. Conversations that seem flattering on the surface reveal themselves to be hollow underneath. She realizes people notice her beauty, her laugh, her presence, but none of them notice the subtle details you once did. Not the way she stares off when her mind is restless. Not the way she hides pain behind sarcasm. Not the way she craves understanding more than applause. And then the emptiness sets in. She finds herself scrolling through notifications with no spark, going out but coming home more drained than alive. The noise that once thrilled her now feels cheap, a performance for people who don't even know what they're clapping for. She is admired but not understood, wanted but not valued, surrounded but unseen. This is where comparison begins to creep in. Someone makes a joke and she remembers how you used to laugh. Someone pays her a compliment, but it doesn't land the way it did when it came from you. She begins to sense that attention from the many can never replace the connection she once had with the one. The difference becomes impossible to ignore. And here is where you must remain unshaken. Don't compete with the crowd. Don't try to prove your presence louder than the noise surrounding her, because attention fades on its own. Your silence allows her to see the contrast between surface-level validation and soul-level connection. That contrast is what cuts the deepest. She begins to understand that admiration isn't intimacy, that desire isn't devotion, and that attention without meaning is nothing more than distraction. And in that moment of quiet realization, she starts to feel the hollowness of the world she thought would keep her full. Attention is never the cure. It is only the mask. And when the mask slips, what remains is the emptiness she can no longer deny. 3. When memories outshine the present. She told herself that moving on would be simple, fill her life with new faces, new places, and new experiences. She convinced herself that the emptiness could be drowned out with laughter in crowded rooms or replaced with the thrill of someone new. And for a time, it seemed to work. She goes on dates, she posts the photos, she dresses to impress. On the surface, everything looks fresh and exciting, as if she's stepped into a new chapter. But something feels off. There's a gap she can't explain. A quiet static humming in the background of every encounter. She sits across from someone who looks perfect on paper. He says the right things, compliments her, maybe even goes out of his way to impress her. And yet, something is missing. She forces a laugh, but it feels hollow. She smiles, but her mind drifts. The truth she tries to bury rises anyway. This doesn't feel the same. That's when the memories begin to intrude, not as nostalgia, but as comparison. She remembers the way you understood her humor without explanation, the way silence with you felt safe instead of awkward, the way conversations flowed without effort, stretching into the night because connection required no script. Every small moment with you carried weight, while every new moment now feels paper-thin. It becomes impossible to stop the comparisons. A joke that falls flat reminds her of the way you would have laughed instantly. A long explanation to be understood reminds her of how you used to get her with a glance. Even silence, once comforting with you, now becomes unbearable with someone else. Memory doesn't ask for permission. It sneaks in through songs on the radio, the corner of a street, the faint scent of something familiar. Suddenly, she's back in your car, laughing at nothing. Back in that quiet evening where no words were needed. Back in the presence of a connection that felt unshakable. And no matter how hard she tries, the weight of those memories crushes the lightness of her present. She tells herself not to romanticize the past. She repeats the mantra that people grow apart, that it wasn't perfect, that you had flaws. And maybe you did. But memory doesn't operate on logic. It operates on feeling. And feelings never forget what was real. This is the point where she realizes that no matter how many adventures she chases, no matter how many people she entertains, something is always missing. The depth, the gravity, the unspoken bond that no new distraction can replace. And here lies your strength as a man. Don't interfere. Don't try to force her to remember. Let memory do its work. Because every comparison she makes between the shallow present and the meaningful past leads her back to the same truth. You weren't just another chapter. You were the book she can't put down. In the end, new attention fades. New distractions lose their shine. But memories rooted in real connection only grow stronger. And when they rise, they make her question not the value of the past, but the hollowness of her present. That is when the longing begins. 4. When control slips away. For as long as she can remember, control has been her anchor. It gave her a sense of power, a sense of safety. She believed she could dictate the pace, decide when things began and when they ended, manage how much you would give, and predict how much she could take. Control was her way of holding the upper hand. At first, she's certain that walking away only strengthens her position. She tells herself you'll chase like you always have. She imagines you sending long messages, explaining yourself, proving you still care. In her mind, she's already orchestrated your response. And for a while, she clings to the illusion that silence is just another move in her game. But then something begins to unravel. Days stretch into weeks, and your silence doesn't break. The reaction she counted on never comes. The validation she thought she owned no longer arrives. She posts strategically, drops hints, says things through friends, even creates situations to test whether you're still watching. Yet nothing changes. The string she thought she was pulling isn't attached to anything anymore. This is when unease sets in. Control only has meaning when someone else responds to it. Without your reaction, her grip starts to slip. What once felt like command now feels like shouting into an empty room. And that emptiness terrifies her more than anger ever could. Soon the signs of her anxiety appear. She begins to check your social media in silence, scanning for clues, looking for cracks, hoping to find evidence that you're struggling without her. She convinces herself you must be faking your peace, but doubt gnaws at her. Because the more she sees you steady and unshaken, the more her own certainty begins to collapse. The irony is that the control she prized so highly becomes the very thing that exposes her weakness. She lashes out subtly, sends cold replies, mixes signals, shows interest one moment, and pulls back the next. These aren't signs of confidence, they're the flailing gestures of someone losing their grip. And though she may not admit it, deep down she knows she's spiraling. This is the turning point you must understand as a man. Control isn't taken from her. It slips away on its own when you refuse to play. The less you react, the more her illusion falls apart. Every moment you stay calm, every silence you hold, every step forward you take without looking back, chips away at the foundation she thought was unshakable. And this is what disorients her most. Seeing you outside the frame she tried to lock you in. She no longer dictates the tempo. She no longer decides the rules. And without your participation, the entire game collapses. Control is never real when it depends on someone else's reaction. The day you stop reacting is the day she realizes her power was never hers to keep. 5. When your calm shakes her core. She braced herself for the storm. She was ready for the anger, the jealous remarks, the bitter replies. She told herself you'd lash out, that you'd try to prove your worth, that you'd throw noise into the silence just to remind her you still mattered. That's what most men do when they're hurt. They react. They make a scene. They try to claw back control through rage or desperation. But you didn't. and that's what unsettles her most. Your calm disorients her in a way no outburst ever could. It's not passive, it's not a performance, and it's not manipulation. You're not posting quotes to prove you've moved on. You're not broadcasting fake happiness, and you're not playing the same games she once did. Your silence doesn't scream, it steadies, and that steadiness is louder than anything else. At first, she tries to convince herself you're pretending. She tells herself you must be acting strong, waiting for the right moment to break. But the more time passes, the clearer it becomes. Your calm is real. You're not seeking revenge. You're not seeking validation. You've simply chosen to stop pouring your energy into a place where it wasn't valued. And nothing frightens her more than that. Because peace, to someone who thrives on conflict, feels like suffocation. She was ready to fight your anger with her pride. She was ready to match your bitterness with her silence. But she wasn't ready to face the absence of both. She wasn't ready to face your indifference. Every small detail becomes a mirror she can't ignore. The calm tone in your rare responses, the lack of questions when she sends mixed signals, the way your world seems to move forward without stumbling. You've taken away the battlefield she prepared for, and what's left is nothing but her own reflection. And here is where the power shifts entirely. Because if you're not angry, if you're not chasing, if you're not proving anything, then maybe you've already accepted the loss and grown beyond it. That possibility terrifies her, because it reveals the truth she never wanted to face. You weren't the weak one for loving deeply. You were the strong one for knowing when to let go. This is why your calm is so dangerous to her ego. Revenge can be dismissed as bitterness. Anger can be excused as weakness. But peace is undeniable. It reflects everything she failed to become: grounded, steady, at ease with yourself. And here is your role as a man. Don't break this frame. Don't let her provoke you back into the chaos she's comfortable with. Your calm is your weapon, your shield, and your advantage. A measured silence, a steady presence, a refusal to be pulled into games. These are the things that shake her core far more than any retaliation could. Because revenge fades quickly, but indifference lingers, and indifference speaks louder than rage ever could. 6. When silence forces reflection. For a while, she outruns it. Noise becomes her shield. New people, endless scrolling, nights that blur into mornings. She fills her life with motion so she never has to sit still. Because stillness is dangerous. Stillness means feeling. And feeling means facing the truth she's been avoiding. But noise doesn't last forever. Eventually the texts slow down. The attention dulls, the distractions lose their shine. The parties end, the nights quiet, the faces fade. And in that stillness, she can no longer escape herself. It starts subtly. A random song she hasn't heard in months catches her off guard. A familiar street corner brings back a rush of memory. A late-night moment where the phone doesn't light up leaves her staring into the dark, realizing how empty the silence feels now. At first, she shakes it off, telling herself it's just nostalgia, just a flicker of weakness. But the more she pushes it away, the stronger it returns. Because the mind never forgets what the heart once felt. Now reflection pierces through. She remembers the patience you showed when she was cold, the steadiness in your eyes when she tried to push you away, the way you saw the version of her that no one else ever noticed, the side she kept hidden even from herself. And with each memory, clarity cuts deeper. She begins to see herself not as the image she projected to the world, but as the person who let something real slip through her hands. Not because it wasn't enough, but because she wasn't ready to receive it. Distance doesn't dilute that truth. It sharpens it. The more time passes, the clearer it becomes. She grows tired of the masks. exhausted by the games, drained from chasing illusions of control. And now she sees, you weren't the one who failed her. You were the one who offered something genuine before she had the strength to accept it. This is the stage where missing you stops being about ego and starts being about recognition. She doesn't miss you when you're chasing her. She doesn't miss you when you're trying to prove your worth. She misses you when you stop needing her validation. She misses you when silence becomes your standard, not your strategy. And this is where your role as a man reaches its highest point. Because now you face a choice. Do you step back into her world when she finally realizes your value, or do you continue forward into the life you've built without her? Her longing is real, but it's not your redemption. Your peace is. Because peace isn't found in her return. Peace is found in your decision to remain whole, with or without her. And that is the moment she starts missing you for real. Not because you reminded her of who you were, but because you finally remembered who you are. So, when does she start missing you for real? Not in the chaos of arguments, not when you beg for attention, and not when you try to prove your worth. She begins to miss you the very moment you remember your worth yourself. This journey was never just about her realization, it's about your transformation. You move from feeding her ego to starving it, from chasing attention to becoming untouchable, from playing her game to walking away from the board entirely. And in that shift lies the only choice that matters. Do you re-enter her life when she finally sees your value, or do you continue forward into the life you were always meant to build without her? The truth is, the ultimate power isn't in making her miss you, but in reaching the point where her missing you no longer defines your peace. The day you stop chasing is the day she starts missing. The day you choose yourself is the day you truly win. If this message gave you clarity, don't just sit in silence, act. Hit like so more men on this journey can find the strength they've been searching for. Click subscribe to Stoic Station, your home for stillness, strength, and self-mastery. And in the comments, anchor your mindset with one line: I choose myself. Because when you claim that truth, you stop begging to be remembered, and you start living in a way no one can forget. This is Stoic Station. Stay disciplined, stay unshakable, and I'll see you in the next lesson.